Springs, shocks. Fingers crossed. There is no way that I just tried opening my bonnet and this shit cracked. Right, no bullshit, quick and easy. How to change your suspension in the front and in the rear on your Nissan Primera. Number one, lift up the front and support the lower control arm. Once you've taken your wheel off, up here you've got bolt number one. You want to clean it up, put some WD-40 on it. Then down here you want to take off your brake line, and you've got a bolt right there, and on the other side you've got a nut right there. Same thing, clean it up, put some WD-40 on it. These are both 17mm, so put a spanner on that side, put your socket on that side and break them loose. So once you've taken the two bolts out, up here you want to undo these three nuts, and then down here you want to push this upwards and then this towards you so that the strut can come out. So once you kick the top arm out the way, move this arm towards you and then lower the top arm to the left or to the right, just towards the body. Then all you have to worry about is moving this out the way so that the strut can come out. Oh, it's probably a lot easier to take the drop link out, but I can't be bothered. So if I were you, I would probably undo the drop link, and that'll give you a lot more space to take the strut out, but it is possible to take it out with that still in place. I've already done on the other side, but up to you. Next, you want to compress this. So with the tools of your choice, this is what I have. It's a, don't know if you can even read that, Vivor. It's a Vivor clamp. It's like the most sturdy, actual decent looking one that I could find for like £30. I'll link in the description. It hasn't killed me yet, so I can recommend it. So here I tried taking the top mount nut off by myself, but I gave up quite quick because of how rusted it was. The method is to put a pair of vice grips on the top of the stud where there's no thread, and then with a spanner loosen the nut, but it's literally impossible to keep the strut still when doing this, So I ended up getting my uncle, who is filling out the whole fucking frame. Thank you, uncle. Instead, what I'd recommend is you get a shock absorber nut removal tool that you can see on the screen. This will let you hold the shock in place while loosening the nut. Or if you've got an impact gun, then literally just use that. But unfortunately, I'm not rich enough for that. Right, so you've just seen me take apart that whole thing. I'll be honest, it might be a two-man job for you because of how rusted the nut is on top of the old strut. Unless you've got a vise that you can put this in, then you can probably do it on your own. But I don't have a vise big enough for this, so two-man job it is. To put everything back together, you've got your new shock. So you have this bump stop here that goes on like this. There we go. Then you've got this little, don't know, like a washer. On top you've got another bump stop that just goes over. And then you have your top mount, which has a little rubber boot here on the bottom. It has to go on the same way it came off because these are not equal length away from each other. So for example, but this won't fit. As you can see, there's a gap here and here, but if you put it on like this, it fits nicely. And then on top of that, you've got another rubber washer that goes on with this little metal part. But obviously not everything goes together at once, so you take that off and you just want the bump stop on. Then what you want to do is you want to get your springs. Now it's the same if you buy normal springs. I've bought lowering springs, but essentially you just have to compress it more with this spring. You want to compress these to the point where you can put the top mount on. I don't have to compress it much because you can just about see the thread with the spring uncompressed. So I'm going to compress that and then put the top mount on. There we go. So I've compressed it just a little bit. Obviously if you have normal springs, you're gonna have to do it a lot more. Before you put the top mount on, you put on your little washer, and then you want to put your upper bushing on top of the washer. Right, so now what you want to do is you want to line up the dipped part of the spring with the dipped part of the strut. Then you can put your top mount on. There we go. And then you can get your little extra bushing, put it in there, and then your washer facing so that it's flush with the bushing. Then you want to get your nut, which you should have a new one. And then you can undo your compressed spring. There we go. And then once you take the compressors off, you've got your strut assembly. Obviously watch out, do not undo that nut because the spring is now compressed, especially if you've got the stock spring on. This will be under a lot more tension. And then you just want to line it up. So I didn't explain this part at all as my uncle decided to come have a chinwag, but basically what I'm doing here is replacing the old broken gasket on the top mount that you would have noticed when taking it off. I'm pretty sure that this reduces vibrations and metal contact, so I definitely recommend doing this. The gasket paper is super cheap and cutting the template takes around 2 minutes. Just pierce the paper on the studs and then cut around it. Now I can put the strut back in. Another little tip that I forgot to mention, if you put WD-40 all around the top spring, between the rubber and the actual spring, once you line up these holes on the strut tower, it's really easy to just put a screwdriver in there and then twist the whole strut to line it up. There we go. The trick is to get the top mount in first, put all the nuts in, and then faff about with putting the bottom end in. Once it's in position, you then just want to rotate the bottom strut bolt by putting a screwdriver through the hole and then just adjusting it so it fits nicely. So I'm currently installing the nuts on the top and then tightening the actual strut nut until it's tight, which will pick the bottom of the strut up, which will let you line it up. So now that I've tightened the top mount nut, the bottom of the strut has went up and it's lined up completely perfectly. Right, so just to go over everything, because I didn't record it that well in the end. Once you have your strut assembled, you want to start by putting the top of it in there. You want to tighten these three. You want to hold this while tightening this with a spanner. Once you can no longer tighten it with a spanner, that's plenty tight. Then down here, you kind of just want to move this arm until you can get the bottom of the strut in there. Then you want to line up these bolts and tighten them. Obviously I told you how to line up the bottom of the strut with a screwdriver going through it. You want to make sure your brake line is back on. You want to make sure that you didn't accidentally take your axle out while pulling on it. That's why I recommend putting a jack right there. And then obviously you want to make sure everything up here is tightened. Make sure everything is tightened. So if we have a look at the back here, we've got a bolt and then we've got the worst invention known to man, a captive nut. Not only is it spinning, it's completely stripped. There's nothing I can do with this. Right, I'm losing my fucking mind. As you saw, like about 10 seconds ago, I was trying to just get the car finished. I just wanted to do the rear suspension. When I started doing the rear, as you could see, I got nowhere. The bolt that holds in the bottom of the shock just decided to rust itself and not leave. The captive nut is just spinning, and whoever I asked gave me the same answer. Just cut it the fuck off. So we splashed out and we got £130 Milwaukee Sawzall. She's fucking hefty. And we're just gonna cut the bolts. I've got some M12 bolts here. I wanna cry. Right, it's totally not the next day. We're gonna do the rear now. I spent 6 hours doing that side, so hopefully I can show you how to do that side relatively quick. Number one, do not jack it up from the rear axle, otherwise you won't be able to get the strut in or out. Jack it up from the front control arm and then just leave it like that. Do one side at a time. Don't jack up the rear axle. Jack goes right there. Right, so once you take your wheel off, you'll be in here. Now, this can either be a 3-minute job or a 3-hour job. You put some WD-40 in there, try and clean it up with a wire brush, same with here, and then you try and undo that nut, well, that bolt. If that nut is spinning, I'll show you what to do. If it's not spinning, you're quite lucky. Take that off, take these two off, and then go ahead with the next part of the video. You can skip to this time mark if that's the case. If your captive nut is spinning, this is how you fix it. So first thing you want to do is you want to give yourself a little bit of extra space. So if you wire brush this nut and then get a 10mm like that, you will be able to, oh Jesus Christ, you'll be able to move this brake line a little bit out of the way. Next thing you want to do is, if you have an angle grinder, you can try using that, but I bought myself a Milwaukee Sawzall, whatever you want to call it. It's quite precise, which lets you cut right in that collar. So if I point at where exactly you want to cut, you want to get the blade right in there, and then that will let you cut the bolt off. So this just slips out, and then I'll show you what to do to get the nut out. So start cutting. So just to show you the kind of progress you should be making, so as you can see right here, I've been going at this for a couple of minutes, and you can see that I'm starting to cut through the metal. You're literally going to want to do that until the bolt is cut. So you don't actually have to cut the whole thing. You don't have to cut the top of the collar, just make sure that you went through the whole bolt, and then you can pry this bit out. So that's what you're aiming for. Right, after about, I don't know, 20-30 minutes of cutting it, stopping, putting some WD-40 on it to not overheat the blade, changing a blade, making sure it's sharp, cutting it again, just keep going at it. It does take ages. As long as you make sure that you keep both of these nuts on, the pressure will be going downwards, so you don't even have to cut through the whole bolt. As soon as you get to a point where the strut can just snap the rest of the bolt, you'll hear the snap, and then you can literally just pull the bolt out. A good trick for this is getting a 17mm spanner and rotating it while pushing it out. So let me grab that. There we go. So that's how you get the bolt out. So once you get that bolt out, now you can take both of those nuts out, and then you can remove the whole strut. Right, so you just saw what I did. First tip with these, WD-40 and clean them the day before, and then on the day repeat. clean the threads, WD-40, undo them, WD-40, go very slowly. If you can feel that the bolt is getting way too tight, tighten it, loosen it, tighten it, loosen it, tighten it, loosen it, and just pray that these don't snap. Next, what I did is I got a hammer and I just hit the back of this until it popped out, and then it kind of broke away the rest of the bolt. Now all you have to do is just pull it out. At this point, if you had your car jacked on the rear axle, the whole axle would go up. You wouldn't be able to get this out. So make sure it's only lifted up here. So let's get this out. Right, so this is where shit gets serious. Once you get this whole space cleared out, you will have the nut here with minimal space to be pushed. What you want to do is you want to make sure it's pushed as far out as possible, and you want to jam a flathead in there. That will give you enough space to then cut right there. I'll put a little arrow on the screen. Once you cut that part of the captive nut, like bracket, you can then move it out the way and put your own nut in there. So once again, get your Sawzall or your angle grinder out and get to cutting. Right, so to show you kind of the logic of what we're cutting, where's my finger? So we started from there. Right, this is where the bracket began, and we're cutting upwards, and then I've literally just got that little bit there left. Once that is cut, we can then push it out the way. So let me get that finished. You can kind of see that. That is now cut. So now what you can do is you can stick a pry bar in there. As you can see, it is cut, and if it focuses, you can put your pry bar in there, and you can just bend it out the way. There we go. If I want to try that again, you can just bend out the way. There we go. Right, so now that it's bent out the way, you can just kind of maneuver the nut out of there with your pry bar again. This isn't the easiest job, and it's definitely not easy to record. Right, another thing you can do is you can stick a flathead in there and then hammer the bracket down, and then you'll have enough space. So let me try that. There we go. And then that side of the nut is out. So essentially this bracket, this part of it was connected here. So you cut this away and then you move this bracket outwards, and then you can get the nut out. And then to get it fully out the way, you just want to hammer it down. You want to hammer it this way and down, and then you can put your own nut on. So let me do that. Right, and now finally to show you how it works. So once you move this bracket out the way, you still have the top part of the bracket, and what's nice is that it actually holds your new nut in place. So as you can see, I'm tightening it without holding the nut. In case you're wondering the specs for this bolt, this is a M12 by 75mm bolt, and it has a 19mm head and a 19mm nut. Right, so now let's get, oh my god, train, great. Now we can get the new strut installed, and I'll show you how to put it in here. little tip for all the people that are doing this on your own. Number one, you need a gun. You can't do it without a gun. Or you need a strut top mount socket removal kind of set. I'll link it in the description. This is a picture of what it looks like wherever my finger is. If you don't have any of that, but you have an impact gun, all you want to do is you want to grab some pipe pliers, grab the actual rod inside of the strut, and then just full power undo it, and then that will come out with no issue. So there we go, that's the top mount. Mine's in decent condition, so I'm not changing it. Then you've got a bump stop, which I'm also not changing because mine's in acceptable condition. And then finally, Jesus Christ, you've got your strut, which I believe my one is pretty fucked. Yeah, it doesn't even go back up. Nice. Yeah, so make sure you change yours, because this is not comfortable to drive on. And these bushings also get pretty messed up. So yeah, change your struts. They're cheap. There is a wrong and a right way for these springs to go on. So all you want to do is put it on and check that the base sits nicely on top of the mount. You want to make sure it's flush. If you do it the wrong way around, then I don't know if you can see it on camera, but the whole thing is too big. So one end is bigger. Right, to put the top mount back on, it is the exact same as taking it off. So the benefit of reusing your old boot and then all you want to do is you want to uncompress the spring. There we go. And now you just want to put it in. Same trick as last time. Put WD-40 up here so you can move this about. So what I found is that the bottom of the mount did not line up with the rear beam at all. The reason why is because where I lifted it all the way up on that side, all the pressure was going on that wheel to the point where it was moving the rear beam up a little bit. So what I did is I lowered it onto this jack stand here, and then that took off enough pressure for the rear beam to go down. Then once you can line it up, I don't know if you saw me, but I had to move this about with the flathead. So I finished this ages ago, but I started doing a little bit of research and I got a little bit scared of how I replaced the bolt. So I replaced it with a normal stainless steel bolt, and while I've been driving for 2 weeks, nothing has happened. I don't really feel safe driving it because apparently the amount of force that this strut exerts on that bolt is a lot, and stainless steel is actually not the strongest metal. So I went ahead and got rid of the stainless steel and bought grade 10.9 bolt and a grade 10 nut, it also says it somewhere else, and a spring washer. So this is literally just hardened steel. It's way stronger and it cost me £6 for both of them, and yeah, we're going to replace that. There we go. So if I come around here, as you can see, I put the bolt through the exact same way. The only difference is right next to the nut I put a spring washer, and just tightened the fuck out of this. These high grade bolts can be tightened super hard, so don't be shy with it. The spring washer will make sure that the nut doesn't vibrate loose. Hopefully you know how to do this. Hopefully you're confident enough to do this. Yeah, enjoy. This took me 6 hours on the other side because that was me learning, but this side only took me about an hour or two, so good luck.